You are listening to the Business Bootcamp podcast. Today we have 3 great videos for you. Firstly, we'll be talking about the best time that you can advertise and how it's actually very similar to investing in the stock market. After that, we'll hear about the hack that billionaires are using to invest their wealth. And lastly, we'll talk about tax-free loans. As always, you can find these videos under Mike Andes over on YouTube. But let's jump into it and hear what it means to buy the dip for your advertising. Here we go.
Before we start talking about advertising and marketing, I would just say in general, running a small business is like the stock market. People have said that the stock market is simply charting out the emotions of humanity. Ups and downs, ins and outs, and up 50%, then down 30%, up and then down. I truly believe that running a small business is the same way. One day is good, the next day is horrible. Then that 1 week you're on top of the world, you got great employees, everything's going great. The next week employees leave, customers are mad at you, leaving bad online reviews. It's like up and down and all over the place. And the way that you beat the market in the stock market, when you talk about beating the S&P 500 or beating the average index, is you need to buy the dip. You need to invest money, and in your business it's time, energy, and just effort when you're actually at the lowest point. So if you want to beat the market in the stocks, what do? You buy when things go down. When there's a bear market, when there's a crash, if you put money in, the most outsized returns are going to happen if you can invest at the lowest points in the stock market. In your small business, if you're going to have a very profitable and have outsized returns when it comes to your industry and your competition, you need to emotionally invest when things are the worst. And when things are so you're overloaded and employees are leaving and you just feel alone and deserted and a partner's gone and there's misunderstandings happening. All this is happening. The person that can invest emotionally, shove all of that energy in when they're at their lowest point in their small business, they're the ones that will have the greatest outsized returns in their small business. Let's step back though and talk about marketing and advertising, because I feel like the same thing is true when it comes to the stock market versus your small business. Because in the stock market, we traditionally think of 2 different kind of general sectors of stock picking. One is going to be growth stocks that go really fast and they can literally double over the course of a year or 2. Then you have more traditional stocks, been around for a long time maybe, and these are going to be dividend stocks. These stocks pay a dividend, which means if you just own 1 share of them, you're going to get a piece, a couple percent usually, return in the form of money back to you as just for being a shareholder. It's like, hey, you get a dividend, you get a piece of the cash, you get a piece of the pie every single quarter or every single month or every single year. We're going to give you a dividend just for being a shareholder. Now, I look at marketing as the same way. Now, when we look at branding and we look at marketing and we look at advertising, all these different words, there's really 2 things you got to know: branding and then direct response marketing. Now, how I look at this is just like the stock market. Branding is like those dividend stocks that are tried and true and tested, and they're usually kind of boring, been around for a long time, take a long time to see the real value of the appreciation of that stock price go up. It takes a long time. Usually these stocks that are dividend stocks are not going to triple in the next 3 weeks. They're not going to double. They don't move very fast, but they also don't crash. They don't go down 95% if it's a really good, tried and true, the dividend stock that's giving a dividend to the investors. The same thing is true about branding. Branding is the holy grail when it comes to advertising, because branding means that I have ownership of a space and a category in the mind of the customer, which means when they think of a certain industry, they think of my product. When I think of a cell phone, I think of Apple. I think of an iPhone. What does it mean? They've done branding over the course of years, long time. They've built up a brand that I now associate their product with a certain industry, with a certain category. Now, what they do not do at Apple is do advertisements like door hangers or flyers. They don't try to do ClickFunnels or lead pages to try to get me through a funnel to buy their phone. They just know that if they could own the mind space of cell phone in my brain, I will buy an iPhone the next time I need a cell phone and next time mine breaks. I'm just going to go buy it. That's branding. Now, direct response marketing is what most of us as small business owners spend our money and time on. And that's not a bad thing. Let me be very clear, and I'll explain in just a moment. But the reason we spend money on direct response marketing is because we need the sale. We need to actually get a customer. We can't just, in 5 or 10 years, if I keep spending money on advertising, hopefully one day I'll own the category in the mind of the customer, I'll have a brand and people will know who I am, and then they'll buy from me. Most of us don't have the money to do that. We don't have the time or money or energy to spend years in our business losing money, and then one day a customer buys from us because they see us all over the town, or they saw one of their friends told them about us. We can't wait years. We need direct response. And that's why traditionally most of our advertising and marketing budget when it comes to small business is not spent on branding. things that really don't drive sales. We usually spend our money on direct response marketing, which is like call now, buy now, click here, learn more. And there's a buy button, there's an estimate request form. We're trying to get them to take some sort of action, direct response marketing. And when I look at those direct response marketing tactics, a lot of it's kind of like, honestly, growth stocks in the stock market, which go up really fast. You can get a lot of sales. You can run a really good ad campaign on Facebook and target people and get a really good click funnel going. Or you can get a really good door hanger campaign, or every door direct mail campaign just like takes off. That's all direct response marketing. And that's why you get an injection of leads the day after an every door direct mail campaign. That's why you get an injection of leads if you turn on a Facebook ad campaign and start running it and you have a high budget, you're gonna immediately get leads. That's direct response marketing. That is not branding. Now, I don't want anyone to think that you have to have just branding and like, oh, well, Apple and Google, like when you see their ads, they're not like call now to get your next iPhone. It's just like literally, it's like people out in nature on their iPhone. It's grandmas talking to their grandchildren, smiling. It's people at weddings using their iPhone. It's all branding. It's not like click here, buy now, only $9.99, 64 gigabytes. It's not advertising any of that because it's about branding. But for small businesses, we cannot afford that. You should not be trying to do that in the short term. And for most of us, we can't hold our breath for 5 or 10 years to create the brand awareness to spend money today on branding. So what should you be doing? Well, it's like any great portfolio that's well diversified. You got to really ask yourself, what is my risk tolerance? And you've got to determine, okay, do I want growth stocks? Do I want dividend stocks? But usually the answer to that question is you have a blend of both of them. And that's truly how I look at small business marketing. And that is, I'm going to use direct response marketing to get customers today. And I'm going to do that over the course of time to the same demographic, the same customer base, in order so that over time, my direct response marketing actually starts to elevate the brand awareness in the mind of the customer to the point where maybe in a few years, because they see my trucks all the time, because they've seen a lot of my advertisements, because they've seen my website, because they have heard about me from their neighbors and their friends and their family, now I start to achieve branding, which means they think of, for example, lawn care, Augusta Lawn Care. My goal one day is that when people think lawn care, think Augusta Lawn Care. Now, they might not even have an Augusta Lawn Care near them, but they'll think of that because of brand awareness. But that doesn't come easily. That takes years to achieve. And so in your small business, your goal should be in the short term, I'm going to focus on those quote unquote growth stocks to grow quickly. I'm going to get those outsized returns. I'm going to invest into door hangers and every door direct mail and a website and running Facebook ads and Google ads. And these are all direct response. But over time, because I'm concentrating all of that direct response marketing towards the same demographic, the same customer base, the same neighborhoods, a very specific city name or zip code, because I'm going after them over and over and over time, they're going to start seeing my vehicles. They're going to start seeing my employees. Their friends and family will have done business with us and will be able to refer them to our business. That will be the long-term branding that pays dividends over and over and over and over, because I don't need to keep spending money on advertising as long as my brand is constantly sending me dividends, i.e. leads. And that's what a brand does, is you don't have to keep spending money on marketing. You don't have to keep spending money on advertising. You simply are getting the dividends just passively of a brand that's been built. You just get those leads automatically. People just go to your website automatically. They find you just natively off of Google search, or they see your trucks. They see your employees. They see and hear about you in their local community because you've been around for a long time. And that traditionally takes 3 to 5 years. And that's why I so often say the first 3 to 5 years, you're spending money on marketing. You're trying to grow the business. That's all direct response marketing. That's short term, like growth stocks, go. It's risky. That's why most small businesses don't get to 5 years in business. It's because it's risky. You could crash. But also in doing that, if you stay focused on a very tight market, you stay focused on a specific target demographic, over time, usually between years 3 and 5, you start to actually achieve branding. And now you get those quote unquote stocks that are giving dividends that constantly are giving just a lead here and a lead there. And oh, so-and-so, I got a referral here. That is creating brand awareness. And that is the long-term game. And it's much more steady. I don't know if my direct response marketing campaign tomorrow, if it's an every door direct mail campaign, it could literally land on a really rainy day and no one call me for lawn care. But with branding, I don't need to rely on timing. I don't need to rely on the market fluctuations. I know that when there's demand, there's going to be supply to me in the form of leads because I own the mind of the customer when it comes to my category. And that's branding. And those dividends are beautiful. It's passive. You don't have to do anything for them. So in the short term, keep focusing on direct response marketing, but if you stay focused on a specific demographic, you will achieve brand awareness, usually between 3 and 5 years in a specific market.
Hopefully that gave you guys a lot of insight on building a diverse portfolio for your branding in your small business. But before we jump into the hack that billionaires are using for investing in their businesses, I want to let you guys know about the best way that you can build that diverse advertising portfolio. And that first step is with lawn care media. Get professional templates, door hangers, postcards, and so much more. Start getting new customers today and slowly building that brand awareness with these customizable templates from lawn care media. Well, let's jump back into it and take a look into the mind of these billionaires and what you can actually take away to apply to your small business. Here we go.
Now, I truly believe that when people look at these great entrepreneurs and business people of our day, they typically will think, well, because they are wealthy, they think this way. But I believe that it's what their philosophies are about business, their thought processes about employees, their thought process about cash flow and understanding businesses. That is what creates the juggernaut. That is what creates the wealth. That is what creates the entrepreneur that we now look up to. And so I'm going to go over a few things today that I looked at recently in Berkshire Hathaway's annual shareholders meeting, where Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett talked to all of their shareholders. And when I listened to it, these are some of the things that popped out to me. And I think they can all be applied in your small business. So whether you're just getting started or you're trying to scale up, these things do apply. The first thing that's very evident when it comes to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger is they're always thinking very long term, and they do not try to time the market. One thing that was really interesting that they said recently is that they never look at the short-term conditions of the market as a thesis or a filter by which they decide whether or not to invest in a business. They simply are looking at the fundamentals and whether or not the price makes sense. So if they're trying to buy a company, it doesn't matter that, short term there is pain in the market, or that there's economic issues, or that there are political issues. They're simply looking at just the numbers of the business and the long-term thesis and fundamentals of what's going to happen in that industry. They are not concerned about the short term. And I think so often we as small business owners can get wrapped up in the short term because the customer's mad at you, an employee walks off the job, you lose a big contract, someone disappoints you, a partner begins to shirk their responsibilities inside the business. These are all things that are very taxing in the short term, and a lot of times we get so focused on that we fail to realize the long-term vision of the business, and furthermore, we buy into the constant short-term possibilities and opportunities that come our way. This is what I call the shiny object syndrome, literally going from one thing to the next, and I'm going to start this type of business and this type of business. And we never lock in for 5, 10, 15, 20 years when the businesses that Berkshire Hathaway buys, traditionally, they stick with them for generations and they don't sell. They literally just keep buying them if they're at a good price, or they just stick with them for the long term. And so I truly believe that most small business owners are constantly changing so many different industries and businesses and different opportunities. They never actually lock in on one and spend 10, 15, 20 years that is required to actually master that industry and become really good at it. So ultimately, the thing that I took away is patience beats timing. So timing the market is a fool's game when it comes to the stock market, and timing the market and getting things just right and having short-term wins when it comes to small business, in my opinion, is also a fool's game. Anything that's going to promise great returns in the short term is probably going to be gone just as fast as it came. And that's why I don't buy into crypto coins, meme coins, or meme stocks that are going up really fast and people are so into their next NFT. As fast as they go up, they will come down just as fast. And this leads me to the second observation that I have come to when it comes to billionaires. When you look at the list of billionaires, most of the people on that list, if you look at them, the vast majority of them are in relatively boring industries. They're not developing the next app. They're not developing the next electric car. They're not developing the next website that we all know about that's breaking news. It's not. It's a lot of very boring industries. Things like gas and food and transportation. These are industries that have been around for decades. They're nothing new. It's not breaking science. It's nothing cutting edge. And when people look at me, they're like, why are you doing lawn care? It's not like revolution. It's not. You're right. It's a boring industry with an absolute demand and an absolute profitability and a massive sleeping market. That's what I'm interested in, because that's where I feel like opportunity lays. And if you look at most billionaires and even millionaires, they don't get involved in massive get-rich-quick NFT type cryptocurrency games. They get really involved and really grounded in boring industries. Boring industries, the reason they're boring is they've been around for a long time. The reason they've been around for a long time is because there's necessitated demand, which means attraction track record over time that people need this product or service. Guess what? Tomorrow, if every single NFT dropped off the face of the earth, no one would care. We'd all just keep living our life. So why not be invested in my businesses that are going to be in boring industries that I know tomorrow the grass will grow and it will need cut? Why would I not want to invest in businesses like fuel, like Warren Buffett just invested a whole bunch in Chevron? Well, guess what? We're going to need fuel for a long time. Even with the advent of electricity and sustainable energy, we're going to need fossil fuels and oil for a very long time. Boring industries bring boring profit margins, and they're usually higher, brought on by cutting-edge technology that requires tons of R&D, research and development, a massive amount of infrastructure to invest in something that might not even work, or there might not be a demand that is sufficient to actually capitalize the business. The third thing that I admire about billionaires and things that have served them so well is they get very cash heavy during times of euphoria. So when everything is going good, they actually hoard cash and they don't overextend themselves. They don't go into deep amounts of leverage. And when you listen to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger at Berkshire Hathaway, last year they had records amounts of cash, over $140 billion of cash sitting there. And over the past few months, they've deployed like 40% of that, like $50 billion they have deployed towards buying up assets. Why? Because we've seen a massive decline in the market. There's now things being sold for 60, 70% off compared to what they were just last year. And that is what a billionaire and someone who takes advantage in business does, is when everyone is all about a certain industry, when everyone's all about a certain piece of equipment, when everyone's all about a certain marketing, they just sit back. They take their time. They don't rush into things. And this is something I'm learning and I need to work on, is that I don't need a rush. There is no rush. Anything that requires a rush to beat the crowd and be the first mover, I don't want to be the first mover when it comes to money, because most first movers get wiped out. And if there's a good thing happening, I can come on with a better strategy. And usually when you look at market leaders, they don't really win the category. It's usually the person that comes on second, third, or fourth that actually have a plan, a strategy, and copy the features of the market leader. They're the ones who actually capitalize and make all the profit. So in times of euphoria, when you ever feel pressure to make any financial decision based upon what everyone else is doing, probably a good idea to not do that and be actually very conservative in that moment and keep cash on hand, because as fast as it goes up, it will come down just as fast. And when it comes down, if you have cash on hand, that's when you'll be able to buy things for pennies on the dollar. And that leads me to my fourth and final tip that I always see billionaires consistently do, is that they buy the dip. Now, that's something that's used frequently in the stock market, and that is when you see a dip in the market, in the stocks, you buy. And you are programmed to see when, hey, we're in correction territory, 10% down, or when we're in a bull case scenario and we are looking at 20% reduction in the stock market, we're going to buy. That is what is typically looked at in the stock market. What I want to think about more when it comes to small business is when you dip emotionally, when you don't feel the energy for the business anymore, when not everyone is on Wall Street bets hyping everything up, that is the moment to buy in stock market, but also in your business. The moment when you feel the lowest, the moment when you feel like giving up, the moment that you feel most discouraged is actually the moment you need to go all in on your business. And doing it at that moment is what's going to lead to outsized returns. The only way you beat the S&P 500 and the index in the stock market is when there's dips, you go all in. When there's dips, when things dive, when things sell off, and there is an opportunity in the market, you have the cash on hand to buy the dip. And when it comes to this, your small business, the entrepreneurs that will stay in the game the longest are the ones that when they get low, when things are not going well, when there are misunderstandings, when employees don't look at things the same way as them, when a customer's mad at them, when they lose a big contract, they still, in that moment, emotionally put all the chips on the table of, I'm still committed to this, I'm going all in, and that is the time to buy the dip. The emotional dip and the roller coaster that is very equivalent to what happens in the stock market, up and down and up and down. And people have said in the past that the stock market is simply a chart of emotions. Well, the same thing goes in small business, and that is running a small business is simply a chart of emotions. Days that are good, days that are bad, days that are exhausting, weeks that are horrible, weeks that are great, weeks that are get great contracts. The next month is an absolute failure. This is the game of business, and the game of business is a chart of emotions. And when the emotions are low, that is when your conviction must rise, and buy the dip on your emotions.
Hopefully that prepares you with some more tools to play the game of small business. Another tool for your tool belt would be lawncarebookkeeper.com, with multiple packages available to handle payroll or bookkeeping or both. This can take a lot of stress off of your day and allow you to get back to what matters. Check that out at lawncarebookkeeper.com. Well, let's jump into our last section here and talk about tax-free loans. This is the secret of the ultra wealthy business owners. Here we go.
One of the most underrated ways of building wealth in America is building a business. Because when you build equity, you don't have to pay taxes on equity. So if I build something from nothing and I build it from zero, and in several years it's worth $500,000, I never had to pay any taxes on my shares or the valuation of that equity. And so today what I want to talk about is how do I improve or increase that equity? How do I improve the valuation of my small business? Because on average, the vast majority of businesses that are small businesses in America, sell for less than 3.5 times earnings. And I don't mean income, I don't mean revenue, I mean bottom line profit. Most small businesses sell for less than 3.5 times earnings. Now, if you look at the stock market, the average on the S&P 500 is somewhere around 19 to 20 price to earnings, which means that the multiples on those companies is much, much greater. The question is, why is a large company significantly valued at a higher rate than small businesses? And honestly, this is what it comes down to. Valuation is going to be determined by growth and what your profit margins are and expected growth in the future. But really what it comes down to, if you really want to boil down valuation of a small business or of a large company, it comes down to one thing. And that is, what is the predictability of future cash flow? That is really what the valuation of your small business hinges on. Let me break that down and explain to you how this is so important, because most people already have clicked off this video, and honestly, by this time, probably 60% of the people have stopped watching the video. But this is so important for your small business, because growing the equity, growing the valuation of your business is honestly the most tax efficient thing you can do. Because if you can increase the valuation or the equity of your business to say $1 million, it's worth $1 million, the business is, you can literally take loans against that, take money out of the business, write off the interest expense as an expense to your business, and not have to pay taxes on that loan. Like, that money comes back. Like, you can use it as a farm to be able to take loans against your equity, and you don't have to pay taxes on that. In fact, you get to write off the interest expense. It's insane. And honestly, this is how billionaires operate. This is why Elon Musk is buying Twitter. This is why he does massive amounts of things. This is why people always get mad at the rich for not paying taxes. The bottom line, they just take loans against their equity. They take loans against the equity and the shares they have in their businesses. And so it's in the best interest of us as small business owners to ask ourselves, how do we improve the equity? How do we build value in the valuation of our small business so it doesn't get sold at a 3 or a 2 or a 1 multiple of earnings? So how do we do that? How do we improve the predictability of our cash flows? The number one way to do this is make sure you focus on recurring revenue. Revenue that comes in over and over and over and over again. Because if I don't know for certain that tomorrow there's going to be work, and that tomorrow I'm going to have a big project, or tomorrow I'm going to get the big job, the contract, if I don't know that for certain, the predictability of that cash flow is low. Therefore, the effect that it has on my valuation of my business is also low. This is why subscription-based businesses are valued so much greater than one-time project work. Now, everyone right now is thinking about lawn care, landscaping, and contracting, but let's step back for just a second. And if you look at the stock market, the companies that have subscription-based revenue have the highest multiples. Whether you look at things like AWS, Amazon Web Services, whether you look at Netflix, whether you look at any subscription box service, all of these services, the reason they get a great valuation is because they have a recurring revenue, monthly amount of revenue coming in, and it's very sticky. They want to keep customers on for a very long time. Customers don't churn very much, and the predictability of cash flow in the future is very, very high. This is why software as a service or SaaS companies have a very high valuation if they have good software, is because most people, if it's good software, they're not going to leave. They're going to stay on for years and years and years. And so therefore, the predictability of the cash flow is so great and the software is so sticky that the valuation is therefore much greater. However, if you have high churn in your small business and you're losing customers all the time, if someone was to buy your business, it's not worth a whole lot because there's not any predictability. There's no certainty that the cash flow is going to keep coming in because of churn. And so when you look at your business, and when I look at lawn care, landscaping, for example, it's not that I think landscaping is bad or projects are bad. There's lots of money to be made there. But when I step back for a moment and realize that generating profit and cash out of the business is actually going to lead to a lot of taxes versus just building the equity in the business, I start to really reconsider the fact that in the long term, I would actually be better served in building a recurring base of revenue. And this is why I encourage every single contractor, regardless of what industry you're in, if you're doing project-based work where the jobs are $10, $15, $20,000, or it's always based upon getting the next customer and you don't have a dependable forecast of recurring revenue coming every single month, I highly recommend you start trying to think about diversifying into some form of maintenance, some sort of plan that you can sell people that gives you recurring revenue over the course of time. Just about for every home improvement business, you can create some form of recurring revenue around maintenance. So if I install a water heater, I can install a warranty and I give a plan that over the course of time, I come back and check it every 6 months or something like that. When it comes to landscaping, I can install massive projects, but I also am going to try to sell that recurring package of maintenance to come back, seal the pavers, clean it, pressure wash it. These are all things we can do in our businesses that allows us to dependably know and forecast what the cash flows are going to be for the business down the road. This is what leads to valuation being increased. And if you're ever going to sell, that's great. But even if you don't sell, and this is the secret of wealthy people in America that have lots of stake in small and large businesses, is the fact that they take their equity, they run a loan against it. That cash that is brought out is not only not taxed, but it's also then any interest that's paid on that loan is actually taken as a tax deduction. So this is, in my opinion, one of the flaws of small businesses is we grow for the first few years and we get so disappointed because there's no cash coming out, there's no profit. But if you're growing top line revenue, you're growing what is going to be in the future dependability of cash flow. And that's why businesses that actually don't make any money can also have a high valuation, is because they're growing so fast. But what people are really looking at is down the road, how predictable will the cash flows be once a certain size is achieved. So in those first few years of business, when you're growing really fast, you're not going to have a lot of cash flow. You're not going to have a lot of profit. And that's why most people give up. But what they got to realize is they're building equity. And if you build a business from zero and maybe in 3 years it's doing $300,000 or $400,000 in revenue, you have to realize you probably built a $200,000 asset, an asset, something that actually has real value, and you didn't get taxed on that. And unless you sell it, it'll never be a taxable event. And so those first few years are very demoralizing because you don't see a lot of cash flow. As you begin to reduce the amount that you're growing year over year, and maybe you go from 100, 200,000, 300,000, and now maybe it's 350, 360, 390, 400. Those years where you're doing less growth, that's when you'll actually start to see the profits. And that is when I highly recommend you shift your marketing dollars away from going after one-time jobs and big projects and start focusing on trying to build at least a little trickle of cash flow that's based on recurring work that is scheduled, that is guaranteed, a subscription, a warranty, something that gives money and cash flow on a consistent basis, because that will improve your cash flow. So whether you're trying to sell your business or you're trying to improve the equity and the valuation of your business to one day take loans against it and do it in a very tax efficient way and build massive amounts of wealth, either of those strategies require that you build value in your small business. And if you don't want to be like the vast majority of small businesses that make pennies on the dollar of their equity when they go to sell or when they try to take out a loan against the equity of their business, you've got to make sure you have recurring revenue.
Hopefully that prepared you guys with the knowledge to vastly improve the equity of your business using reoccurring revenue and how to apply that wealth to grow your company. That's all we got for you today on the Business Bootcamp podcast. If you guys want to see anything else Mike Andes, head over to our website, mikeandes.com, and definitely check out those other two websites I mentioned, lawncaremedia.com and Lawn Care Bookkeeper. The more tools you have in your tool belt, the more effectively you'll be able to run your business.